How's it, Sebastian? How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good, yeah. So for those who don't know, this is Sebastian Bowkis, the legendary Twitter indie hacker entrepreneur that has been gracing the Twitter sphere recently with his amazing Chatbot app. So how you doing, bro?
I'm good. Tired, busy, but good. Yeah.
That's
How are
good,
you?
man. So I wanted to start off just if you could tell the people what you've built recently and what chatiq is all about, for those that haven't heard about it, and just what you've built and what you've found success with recently in the entrepreneurial game. I want to get to some of the earlier questions first, but just for some context, what have you built and what should people know you for at the moment?
So basically, the idea is a automated customer service agent that you can have on your website. It's got a chatbot section to it, which is trainable on your company's data. It can answer users' questions, like frequently asked questions, but it can also sort of go into a little bit more information, and it can scour your entire website very, very quickly. So if somebody's got a question that they need an answer to quite quickly, instead of going through the entire website, they can find the answer. More recently, if the chatbot gets confused or if there's something sort of more extreme that it can't answer, the customer can submit a support ticket through the chatbot, and then it will prioritize that support ticket against your company data. You'll then get a notification on your phone, on your email, based on the priority levels that you set, and then also it can automatically respond using AI to that support tickets. You can draft an email response and send it directly through within the app.
Okay, no, that's super cool. So the first question I had that I've wanted to know ever since I saw your first Twitter post was, you always talk about how you were a non-technical person, you didn't know how to code, and that what was the original idea for chatiq, and how did you actually go about starting to build it without knowing to code? Because as a programmer myself, I saw it and I was like, damn, this man's killing the game and he doesn't even know how to code. That's awesome. So I'd like to hear the story behind that, how you got started.
Yeah, so like I say, didn't know how to code, but I've always liked creating things and making things. So I live in London, and one of the biggest things that I can't do is make things. When I was a kid, I used to make things with my hands a lot, and I really enjoyed the creation of things. And that's obviously something I can't do sitting in London. So I've always liked the idea of software and building an application, but I've always struggled with the actual creation part of it. And I think it was around January last year when the sort of the buzz around ChatGPT was happening in AI, and my brain was just kind of going crazy thinking of all these ideas of things that I could do. And the initial idea was, because of my background, I did a lot of stuff in e-commerce and marketing. My initial idea was to create essentially a chatbot where people could talk to and check out through. It would be able to get their sort of name, email, and then they could submit the card details through it, and then it could basically check out and they could buy the product in a chat format. That proved to be quite complicated, so I sort of pushed back on that idea a little bit. But then obviously it grew into what it is today. But to actually get started, I literally just built the minimum viable product using a no-code tool. So I think I used bubble.io was the first tool that I used. And I'd taken a couple of Udemy courses on it before, but the knowledge that I had in them was basically zero. I had no idea what I was doing. Whipped together something and then sort of begun to continue to learn as I went along, basically.
Okay. Wow. No. Okay. That's super inspiring and amazing. And have you since learned to code, or are you still running everything on a no-code platform?
So I'm kind of now moving in the direction of learning to code. I don't know if you've seen me on Instagram, but I'm doing some more. It's sort of almost like a series where I'm basically sharing how I built or started to learn to code using ChatGPT. So a lot of the stuff that does the heavy lifting within the app, the powerhouse of the app, is all custom code. And a lot of that I either wrote myself by just learning using ChatGPT, or a lot of it was actually written just by prompting GPT-4 to continue to build up huge amounts of code.
It's amazing what you can do nowadays.
It is a bit ridiculous. It's not ideal. If I could properly code, then that would probably be the ideal solution, and I'm definitely moving in that direction as I write more code. And a lot of it can be quite buggy, so it's just understanding how to write the code in a way that's not buggy and then add security features and all these other things. Now, I would say probably about 50-60% of the app is code.
Okay, no, wow, that's awesome. I wanted to ask like the scale of chatiq at the moment. Like, how many users do you have? Obviously, don't want to ask what your MRR is, but like what I see like on your testimonials on your website, you got some big brands working for you. Maybe you've got a story from like a big brand and that's like enjoying your chatbot and how it's kind of like shaped the development of the product. But just like how big is it right now? Because it seems to be like just taking off from what you're posting, and which is awesome.
Yeah, so the sort of story in terms of growth for chatiq was very explosive right at the start. So I built this product and it was just unable to really do anything. I showed it to a couple of businesses. I had like a few calls with people from LinkedIn and they all liked it. So I spent a couple of months going back to the drawing board and making it better. And then I launched it on TikTok, and my 5th video, it didn't go viral, but it got like 100,000 views and a lot of people
That's pretty viral in my opinion.
my brother does stuff on TikTok and quite consistently he'll hit like 1 million. So that's kind of like now my new benchmark.
Okay. Moving the goalpost.
Yeah, exactly. But I got thousands of people signing up, and within the first 60 days, I got 10,000 users signed up to the app. And some of those people
That's insane, by the way. Like, you just say that like it's nothing. That's insane.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think I did it. It was just after my 25th birthday, and my parents had come up to London, and that day they'd come up. It was like a celebration for my 25th. And I was just there on my computer in the pub just working on the app because I was so stressed that it wasn't going to work properly. So I think the first, like on launch, the first day was 752 users within 24 hours. And now we've just passed 12,000 users.
That's pretty cool. So I want to ask you later about like your social media tactics and what your kind of approach to growth has been. But I actually wanted to ask, like, before you were doing chatiq, what were you doing? Like, did you go to uni? I saw actually on your LinkedIn, like you did physics. Like, did you finish your degree in that? Like, what were you working on before this took over your life? Like, it sounds like it has.
Yeah, so I've been just on like the business work side of things. I've been building businesses and little side hustles basically as long as I can remember. So like I started off right up like at school selling sweets and stuff, and then it kind of, as I went to university, I had a business where I was doing photography, so I had a photography YouTube channel. And then that basically was my focus, most of my focus throughout university while I was doing physics. And it got to the 3rd year, I was supposed to do 4 years at university, I ended up just doing the 3. And then the reason for that was I was so focused on the business, really wanted to get that going. And then I left, ended up, that business sort of died a little bit over COVID, not a lot happened. And then I kind of went into like freelancing and started to learn a bit more about e-commerce and advertising. And I spent the first 2 years, so I moved out, lived in London, and spent the first 2 years in London doing freelance, sort of running ads for e-commerce brands.
Like digital marketing?
Kind of digital marketing, yeah. And that's where the idea came from while I was working with those people, because I knew the amount of traffic coming into the websites, the amount of emails that these companies were getting, that they just couldn't handle, or the cost of handling those customer emails.
So you saw the need and you made the solution.
Yeah, and then I got really fed up working in it, so I quit in, I think it was November 2022, I think. Yeah. And I spent basically 6 months with no work, nothing at all, just sort of sitting there thinking, I need an idea and I need something to build. I want to build something for myself and I want to start building my business again. And that, around that time, that's just after that, like around January, February was when I had the idea for chatiq. So I spent about 6 months basically with no money coming in, just building and thinking.
Okay, no, that's really instructive, and you went down the classic entrepreneurial path then of like always doing stuff, always building things. I wanted to ask specifically then about like ChatGPT, and that obviously it's like a year and a bit old now. But what do you say to the kind of people that like say there's not a lot of moat or business model in just building on top of someone else's platform? Like, oh, this application is just a ChatGPT wrapper. There's other people that say, oh, every website is just a database wrapper. But obviously you're growing now and building for the future, and I wanted to know what your thoughts are on like proprietary technology in that, and why like chatiq and the stuff that you've built is more defensible perhaps than just other ChatGPT clones, and like if you have plans to build more of a defense around your product, then so that it's not just a ChatGPT wrapper, even though I know there's a lot built on top of it already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is one of the things that it really begun to stress me out. When I first launched, there was me and I could count, there were like 4 other softwares doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So there was very little competition. A lot of people wanted. So right at the start, it was just I saw people talking about the fact they wanted to add extra knowledge and data to ChatGPT. So I was like, right, we'll focus on that first. And then as time got on, people sort of begun to get used to ChatGPT, and then you sort of lose that viral potential growth from it. And then obviously people just join the market, especially with the whole no-code tools. Just a whole load of clones started coming out, especially when I started to, I think I got like 2-3 million views a month for my app. So a lot of people were like, this is cool, this is working, it's got a lot of interest, I'll duplicate it. And that's when I was thinking, we need to start building a moat here. But I think just going back to whether you need to start a moat or not, or the idea of wrappers right in the beginning, I think like wrappers is probably the quickest way of coming up with an idea and building something that could potentially work, and just establishing yourself in some way, and then build a moat on top. I think instead of just focusing on building something that nobody can replicate, you're never going to end up launching. So build something first, and then you can sort of attach things to it. And also, like, some of the stuff that I've built at the moment, I never would have thought of right at the start. This is only stuff that I know because I've spoken to users.
Makes sense. So you definitely subscribe then to like the YC, like build it, talk to users, build as little as possible and get it out there and then iterate on it.
Yeah, actually, I think I have a very different mindset to a lot of sort of indie hackers, startup founders.
Yeah.
Because I sort of came from outside the space. So in my mindset, it was like, I need a product and I need marketing and customers. That is it. And I see now, so basically it was just dumping as much traffic into the products as possible, start charging straight from the offset. And I see a lot of people trying to go a very slow route about things, bringing on millions of users and then validating it and doing it for free and then start charging later on. And I was just thinking, well, we need to hit these base KPIs to start making money from this. And then basically just treat it as if it was like a normal business selling any other product. And it seems to have worked quite well.
Okay, that's great. Now also, when you're low on funds, though, like when you're a young person without like huge money behind your name, it can be a powerful tool actually, not a hindrance.
Yeah.
So then you mentioned it, but then I wanted to ask, so then what has your approach been to like growing then on socials and kind of advertising? What streams have you gone down to market the product? And like in particular, what did you use at first, like for the first couple of like cold reach outs / like how did you get your first 10 users? And then how have you changed that over the last couple of months to like how are you onboarding a couple thousand users a day now? Like what's your strategy been there? Because it looks like it's been very successful. And I selfishly want to know the hacks behind it.
I'm pretty sure there's probably some better ones than the ones that I'm doing, but the way it started, I basically just did LinkedIn cold outreach. So to get my first 10 users was just talking to people on LinkedIn. So
how many people did you talk to?
I probably had about 50 meetings and nobody actually signed up to it. But I built like a list of people who were interested. And the reason I didn't sign up probably was because it didn't work, but I was showing them what like the idea and the vision of what it was.
Yeah.
These people were the ones that sort of gave me the reason to be like, okay, I'm gonna focus on this idea, but there's some severe changes I need to make, and I'll fix those changes, and then I'll come back to it. So I did that, and then I sort of crunched the numbers a bit, and I was like, to make any money from this, because I'd been unemployed for 6 months, I need this to make some money that I can actually start to work on it. That strategy is just not going to work, so I need something much more viral. So that's when I moved to TikTok and short form content. So TikTok was basically where it all started. I had one account and I was just posting videos talking about what my app is. But my like short form strategy at the time was just, I've got an idea, let's create a video, see what happens. And I was very lucky to hit sort of the viral trend at the start with ChatGPT, and that's definitely what helps at the start. But as that sort of disappears, you then have to start thinking about long-term strategies, because a lot of people, when they launch a software company, if they've got a good launch strategy, they have like huge success at the start, and then it all comes and slows down, and then it's getting consistent traffic. So it's been scaling that short form content across multiple TikTok accounts, multiple Instagram. I've even started Pinterest, Snapchat, YouTube, basically every social media.
Nice. When's the Tinder account coming?
Sorry?
When's the chatiq Tinder account coming, man?
So it's on its way. It's currently in development. We're just struggling with the swipe feature. That's the difficult part.
Yeah, so that actually leads to my next question then, was like, that sounds like a lot for one man. Are you still doing everything by yourself, or have you started to grow a team now?
I've gone through phases of bringing people on to help, and then ended up getting rid of certain people. The biggest struggle that I had is finding sort of high quality people for a price that I could then afford.
Yeah.
Especially like at the start, the biggest thing for me was I need a developer, but I just could not afford a developer. So I was like, okay, well, I have to learn everything. So I've kind of gone through cycles of developing and no marketing, and then marketing and no developing, which is very, very stressful, but it has meant that I've been able to sort of continue. At the moment, all of the marketing is run by me. I've just found ways of automating as much of it and scaling it in a way that I don't need to have, tens of employees doing different things.
So, like, do you repurpose a lot of content, or do you more mean, like, you've written a little script to, like, chop up videos for you? I'm just interested in the mechanics behind it.
So I actually did some tests where I tried to write some little scripts to see how much content I could create, but the idea, it wasn't getting anything good enough that was actually going to get views to bring in sales, so I just sort of scrapped that idea. So actually, like, this last week, I've started a test where I've created 20 different TikTok accounts. I think I've got 8 different Pinterest, 8 different YouTube,
That's mad.
about 8 Snapchat accounts. I don't know how well Snapchat's going to work. That one's definitely just like a shot in the dark. But what I'm doing is I've got a piece of paper to explain it. I'll try and draw a diagram and send it to you. So the idea is I've basically got feeder accounts, so 5 different feeder accounts, and then each account will post one piece of content, gets repurposed onto 5 other accounts.
Okay.
So as opposed to repurposing one piece of content 20 times, I'm doing it 5 times. And that seems to be working pretty well. So over the last couple of days, I've been averaging 20 to 50,000 views per day just from that repurposing strategy.
Wow. That's almost like Mr. Beast's a kind of changing of his channel where he had the different languages and the different regions. Well, now he's got a Portuguese Mr. Beast account, he's got an Italian Mr. Beast account, and just a small little thin layer of translation is enough to like amplify the distribution tenfold.
Yeah, so that's like one of the next things, because my app so the chatbot can respond in, like, I think it's 98 or 95 different languages, and you can customize the text on it to write whatever language you want that you use. So the next strategy is take this sort of the 5 feeder accounts, create 5 more in, I don't know, French or German or Spanish, and then really like scale it up through that, and see how well that works. Because obviously, the more people I'm bringing on from other countries, then there's a lot less competition, for example, in Spain than there is in the US.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. Now this next question, like, feel free to like tell me if you don't want to answer it on that. You've obviously got defensible technology in there, but I'd like to know, like, as like a technical person myself, I'd like to know like more behind the scenes of like how your systems and that are actually running. Because I mean, I've used the GPT API and that, and you can just send stuff to GPT and it can send stuff in the background. And there's lots of different like programming frameworks like LangChain and that for doing retrieval or augmented generation, like what you're doing, like when you're teaching knowledge and that. So have you got like proprietary systems that are doing that RAG in the background, or are you still using like no-code tools there, or is that where like the custom code that you've developed comes in? Just wondering as to like how you've hooked up the RAG to the GPT calls, and how you've gotten it so quick and how so fast, because my API calls do not run as fast as yours do in your video demos.
Yeah, so this is something that really. So I'm doing, I don't know if you see my YouTube, but this camera I've got here, I've been vlogging everything that I've been doing from the start.
Yeah, I watched a few of your videos.
There's a lot. I've got about a terabyte of content to edit. I've got a lot to get through. But so the next video that I'm posting is basically sharing where I was went from the no code to starting to write in code. And the reason that happened was because, like you say, like the API calls are incredibly slow, and it was also becoming quite expensive to run this whole thing on Bubble. So I sort of explored the places like things like LangChain, and that's like the route I wanted to start to take. But obviously, I couldn't do that with no code. So I basically started to build little mini scripts that would replicate what I have, and then find a way of sort of plugging that into what I've got at the moment. Then, in literally like the last month, I've really focused heavily on the speed and the responses, the response times. The reason for this is I actually got like 5 emails in a week or something from people saying I'm cancelling because the response times are so slow. I was like, well, that's a problem. I need to fix that. And I'd thought of fixing this for a while, but it was quite a complicated thing for me to try and fix. I was like, okay, I'll ignore it for the time being. But essentially, yeah. And I was like, actually, I'm probably losing quite a bit of money from this, so let's focus on that. And basically what we do now is we cache the responses. So essentially over time, your chatbot will basically learn in some ways from your customers talking to it. So when you build your chatbot in the playground, you can, let's say you've got, a question like what is chatiq, or can I submit a support ticket, or how much does this cost? You can ask those questions, and once somebody's asked that question, that response has been cached. Now, if somebody asks a similar question, for example, they say, what can I use chatiq for? The chatbot will basically deem how close that is to the initial question of what is chatiq, and if it's close enough, then it will use the cached response from the other question. And you can adjust the responses as well.
So do you do like a Euclidean, like closest distance question similarity search there?
It's basically like semantic caching. I'm going to be honest, the actual technical jargon behind it, I'm not really sure. I found a system that libraries and things that I could use, and I was like, yeah, that works. And it was a headache to get it working. But yeah.
Okay. No, but I mean that's half the battle of software development. It's just how does this weird library work? You don't need to know how it works. You just need to use it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So one of the really I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday. They commented on one of my videos, and the question I get a lot is, what's your strategy, where OpenAI goes down? And in fact, I got a text message I've literally just got one here that came in just before we got on the call, which is basically, we're investigating basically problems with the API. So quite often ChatGPT goes down and I can't get responses, but now because I'm caching those responses, even if OpenAI goes down, it can still respond. So, there was a period about a month ago where it went down for about 4 hours, and all of my customers were like, what's going on? We can't use chatbots, but now it can still respond if you've got cached data.
And is it really worth doing all the development to like hook up another hosted like model, or to hook it up to another API? It remains to be seen. I actually see OpenAI's API like pricing is changing. Like you're gonna have to buy credits going forward, not just run it on your credit card.
Yeah, that's. I'm worried about that just because my organisation. But yeah, I don't know, if it works for them, I'll find a way to make it work for me.
That leads into my next question then of actually so like you said you didn't want to mention revenue numbers, but how much is the system like costing you in the background, and like how much did you have to float all the cash at the start before you started bringing in customer revenue, and like are you happy like sharing like how much profit you're getting? Because like obviously AI software is very different to traditional SaaS products where it's almost free. The database, the egress charges is free, whereas AI is not the same with the cost of GPU time. So I wanted to know then like how much you're paying to run this product in the background.
Yeah, so at the start when I first launched it, obviously it was just Bubble. I built it on, and I think it was a free trial for about $30 a month. So I had 2 weeks basically on a free trial. Ran that, and that kind of worked. As then I started to get a lot more users, I basically bought sort of the more service based on it, dedicated. And then that was about $150 a month was basically what I was running on for a while. And then I started to bring on like different databases, and then especially when I started writing my own APIs and things, that cost increased. I would say probably running about 80% profit. I kind of had a stage where I was, like the costs were getting quite high because obviously everyone's talking to the chatbot, and I went through a sort of thought process of the responses are quite bad on GPT-3, but if I go to GPT-4, it's going to be slower but better. So I didn't know what to do. So for a brief period, I actually ran the chatbot on GPT-4. I looked at how much that cost, so I decided not to do it anymore. But now, because it caches the responses, if out of all the questions, once somebody's asked a question once, then 100 times after that, I'll never need to use GPT again. So like it reduced my costs insanely. So now it's my cost to OpenAI is very, very limited. Obviously, there's a spike when new users come on because obviously they're training up their chatbots. But after that, like it's fairly stable.
That's a nice little piece of engineering you've done there. It's actually really clever.
It's nice to look at. Save some money on that one. Yes.
Yeah, no. So then what in your opinion has been like the toughest part of like the chatiq journey so far? Like has it been the technical stuff? Has it been dealing with some particularly difficult customer or churn? Like what's been the toughest part so far? Like if there was ever a point where you thought like, damn man, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be.
Definitely the technical stuff. That has been
really.
It's a weird one. It's like it's been the most difficult part of the entire journey, but it's also been my favourite part. I absolutely I detest and I hate marketing. I actually had it's just that if I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't do it. I hate it. I had a meeting. So when the video that I'm posting on YouTube soon, I ended up getting on a call with there's a company that does $300 million a year. Very interesting. They actually said a partnership with chatiq. And I was talking to him, and he was like, if you could sort of have an established role, what would it be? Would you sort of be like the marketing or the technical side? And I was like, technical. And he was like, okay, but you're not like a technical guy. And I was like, yeah, but that's the area that I really enjoy learning. I'm sort of getting better at. But that was definitely the hardest part, is learning it all, and also, especially when it started to get into code, was having that thing in my head saying, this has to work. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to find a way to make it work. And quite often I'd be sitting there like at 3 a.m. trying to get this piece of script working, and it wasn't working. And I was like, well, I know if I just keep at it for another week, I can get it working. And I kept saying that, and eventually it would work. It's like, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty sick. So then, like, what are you pivoting here to more like lifestyle questions? You're obviously like quite a successful entrepreneur now. So what are your thoughts around like work-life balance? Like, what's your kind of routine for working on chatiq every day? And like do you work out? Do you chug 16 Zins and a coffee a day? I tried one once and I don't know what all the hype is about.
Yeah, a lot of coffee is consumed. It's the work-life balance kind of goes through changes. So when I first started, like, it was just work constantly, and I basically almost burnt out. So I was like, okay, I've got to start taking a little bit of time away from this. So I tend to just try and do like a full work day. I try and work from about 9 until about 7 o'clock every day, Monday to Friday. Trouble is that I can't take my mind away from work. So if during the week I'm not meeting up with friends, and that, like, for the last 2 weeks that hasn't really happened, but if I don't meet up with friends, then I will just work until I go to sleep. So yesterday I worked from 9 until 1 in the morning. So I'm just working all day. So I find it very difficult, but also I work in my bedroom. So it's hard to sort of separate the two. But if you can separate the two, then it's much better.
Okay, yeah. So then what's on the cards next for you and chatiq? Like, have you got a roadmap of things you're developing, or are you just taking it like day by day with what your customers are asking for? And do you have like a grand vision for in the future, or are you just taking it like, see how big it can get?
I'm sort of taking it in terms of features and development, more day by day. I'm at the point now where I'm very happy with what the product can do, like the number of bugs. There are still a few things that I'm working on and fixing, but I'm very happy with where it's at. It's a very marketable product now, so I'm focusing, most of my time is now, I'm very much in like a marketing cycle right now.
Okay, cool. Then as someone who's, you mentioned the personal brand and that, is your like desire to like have like a kind of online public persona, kind of like some of the indie hackers have, or I don't know, like Alex Hormozy and that, or would you rather just like be like the quiet Tim Cook kind of vibes, where like you run things from behind the scenes and that, or I don't know, just like wondering like would you go full tilt into the personal brand YouTube channel celebrity thing as opposed to just running product, or is that like not your desire?
I'd rather not be hugely well known. I'd rather not go down the whole personal brand thing hugely. I mean, I've semi-done it before. When I did the photography business that I had a YouTube channel that got to 150,000 subscribers, and I did that, and it never became a problem at that level. A lot of my audience was overseas though, but now with the stuff that I'm doing at the moment, a lot more of the audience is in the UK and the US. So like I said, sort of been a couple of occasions where people have sort of bumped into me and recognised me, and I find that whole thing a little bit odd. I also
the problems of fame, eh?
Yeah, exactly. There was one time I was at a cafe and some guy comes in and he's like, "Are you Sebastian?" I was like, "Huh? Yeah." And then anyway, we had a conversation. He was a nice guy, really nice to sort of chat. But then when he left, there was a guy sitting opposite me in the cafe. I was like, "Does this happen a lot?" And I was like, "No, definitely not." But that was quite an odd one. I got a free donut though, so they thought I was famous.
That's sick. Nice.
Nice, yeah, exactly. But what was I saying? I've forgotten now. Your personal brand. So I would probably continue. I would do it. Because it's there's a lot of cash you could make from a personal brand. But my ultimate goal is build products and then exit values and things.
Like it seems like it's leaving a lot of money on the table to not build a personal brand these days.
Yeah, and ideally, if I didn't, like I said earlier, I wouldn't like marketing thing. That's not really the thing I enjoy. If I could just build products and I could just spend all my time making and creating things, then that would be the thing that I would do, if it didn't make any money at all. And the easiest way to do and make extra income is through personal brand. Like I have some stuff where every now and again I do development stuff for people, where I build them their own little MVP or software, and I do that, and all that comes through from the personal brand. So it definitely is helping at the moment. And then that money can feed into growing, chatiq and other things.
Okay, nice. So then, as moving questions here to more like a technical side of things, as someone who's like worked extensively with, like I guess what you would call frontier models with OpenAI and that, and like this newfangled technology, where do you see that going in like the next 2 to 3 years? I actually want to ask like your p-doom, your probability of doom from artificial intelligence, but like how powerful do you think the model is going to get in 2 to 3 years, and like how long do you think it's going to be before tools like chatiq and that are just everywhere and everyone's using it? Because you're obviously like right at the forefront of the technology wave. So as someone who's been riding that wave, I want to know like what are your predictions for that AI and like the model capabilities and just like the societal impact, I guess, in the next couple of years as someone who's seen it being used in a day-to-day like business basis.
I think so. Tools like chatiq, I think there's definitely. I mean, there's thousands of people doing the same thing now. So it's trying to keep ahead of that competition is definitely a tricky thing. But I'm keeping ahead. Basically, my motto is like I'm not basically building because of the product. I'm not getting customers because of the product anymore. I'm trying to beat my competition because I'm better at marketing. But in terms of like where things are going with ChatGPT language models, I think a huge amount of the focus is going to be on the whole coding side of it. I mean, if you look at what I've been able to achieve, I wouldn't have been able to do this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know when ChatGPT came out, but before GPT-4 was a thing, I wouldn't have been able to do any of this to the level that I've done it without that. So just as an application of that, the amount of money that people can create and make on businesses that they can build from it, suddenly like the barrier to entry is just dramatically reduced. So there's going to be, I reckon, a huge flood of products like SaaS products coming as people realize they can do things like this. But I think just generally, that is kind of the route people want to take with AI. You can create automations, personal automations. You can have your own personal sort of knowledge base for your GPT. And then like you've seen, like Shopify has just released a new tool, which is, I just saw an advert. I haven't actually checked out what they do. I saw it this morning. It's basically turn conversations into money was their thing, and they've got like some chat feature. So I'm like,
turn conversations into money. Sounds good to me.
That sounds good. So it's like it may be something similar to the idea I had right at the start, which is a conversation tool where you can then check out through. So it could be that websites move in a completely different direction, and if that's the case, then chatiq is going to need to pivot as well.
Okay, yeah. So then, like, as a software developer, my job in like its old form is not going to exist in a couple of months to a year or two. But so then I wanted to ask, like, what's your advice to like non-technical people then who want to get started and who've seen what you've done and are just like in awe of like the speed at which you've moved and how you've taught yourself? What would be your advice / like specific, like even like technical recommendations to people who wanted to learn to start building stuff and start, so like you're saying, doing things for themselves? What would you tell them to do?
So the main thing that I would say is start to learn coding in some way. Like it doesn't have to be building an entire software, right? So the stuff that I'm doing on Instagram, which is I built a Python script to sync all the emails from Gmail and send it to ChatGPT and mark it as spam or categorize it. That sort of thing is and I did all of that using ChatGPT. So that sort of thing you can learn, how to integrate with other softwares. You can learn how to build APIs. You can learn like the building blocks for building a software. So just by creating little scripts, you can then, and also like when you do that, if you share that content very quickly, you can see what people find interesting and what they don't. And from that, you can say, right, this is a very good idea to build into a product, or I'm going to waste my time here. Because what you're looking for, if you're building it into a product, you want to avoid just having those viral spikes. You want to find something that has got inherent value that you can continue to market and it hits every single time. And when you create a piece of content, you say, I wrote a little script for this, you can very quickly see, okay, this is not going to work or this is going to work. And then from there, you get an idea of how everything works. You're learning very, very quickly. And then it's just a matter of piecing all that together.
Okay, no, that's really good advice. I wanted to ask then if you have any like best or crazy stories from the clients and that, or like anything that you've been particularly impressed with people using chatiq with, or anything like unintended that you've had to shut down, or that. Do you have any wild stories from the upcoming of the product?
I have a few from like right at the start, especially when I didn't know what it was going to be. I just had a product and I was like, here, sign up and do what you want with it.
Yeah.
And then let me know what you think. So I had like this one that I mentioned where I've been approached by some fairly big companies. There was one who was like, we're looking for maybe some partnership or something, and just literally sitting on a Zoom call with the CEO of a company that does $500 million a year is, okay, wow. I launched this 2 months ago. That was a little bit crazy. And then there's some people who came to me and they had like similar ideas of things. I've had a fair few people come to me saying, I want to build a chatbot that can learn from your website and respond to customers. Do you want to partner? And I'm like, go on my website, that's what my product does. I've already got that. So you have a fair few things of those. But there's nothing like being super crazy. I found like, lots of people signing up just trying to do random things with the product. And then it came down to just working out how I'm marketing it and selling it. Just stop people coming in and just trying to do random stuff. But yeah.
And is that part of also how you reduced your churn? Just by like narrowing the niche that the product serves?
Yeah, so like right at the start, so when I went on LinkedIn, when I was talking to people on LinkedIn, it was very, very, very specific, and I would have to build a chatbot for them. And then I opened it up where I said you can upload a PDF, you can scrape a website and upload text. And I also added in like scraping a YouTube video. So suddenly I've got people who are students coming in, I've got businesses coming in, I've got loads of different people coming in, I've got teachers trying to create tools. And there's so many different things. And there was a brief period I was like, okay, which route do I take this? Which route do I go down? As I then started to focus on the customer service side of things, you then get less people from students coming in, because it's not necessarily bad. You get the wrong audience coming in, they sign up to the product, realise it doesn't do what they want, or they think they can just make it work for their use case, and then they leave, so it's not the end of the world. But it does still give you valuable insight. So I'm thinking of building a spin-off separate version where people who are students can use the product in the way that they want. So you still learn from people in their own way, but yeah, definitely you learn from the correct audience of people.
Okay, no, cool. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's nearly time to wrap up here. But like, I wanted to ask. I asked earlier what your advice would be to like non-technical people who wanted to get started with stuff. What would be your advice then for like people just wanting to get started in general with entrepreneurship and in general with building their own things, or they see success like yours? Like, what's the best piece of entrepreneurial advice that you've gotten that has like led to decent success in your life?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think definitely just, first of all, find something you actually enjoy that you can stick at. I did a tweet yesterday where I basically or a few days ago, I ran through all of the different businesses and side hustles that I've tried to run over the years, and every single one of them have failed. And the only difference between those ones and chatiq is I've worked on chatiq now for it's coming up to a year, and I've worked on it like 8 to 10, 15 hours sometimes per day, and it's been like obsessive for me, and it's something that I've really enjoyed. And the only reason things have happened the way it have is because I have never given up on it. And the other thing I've noticed a lot is with the sort of side hustle mentality where I've tried dropshipping, I've tried agencies, I've tried like the quick cash grabs. The problem with those is if you're not interested in it, you're not going to keep working on it. And when the business is going bad, that's when the business needs you most. And that's the time when you really need to be focused on it. And the only way to be focused on it then is if you're really deeply interested in what it is that you're doing, I think.
Okay, no, that's really solid advice. Thank you. As an aspiring entrepreneur, it inspires me as well.
I'm good. I'm glad.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for chatting to me today. Where can people find you online? Like plug all the sites, plug all the personal brands. Where can people find you online?
So I've got my YouTube channel, which is currently still called Bastian Bowkis. The name of that might change, but I'll give you the links for everything. I've got my YouTube, my Instagram, Sebastian Bowkis on there, and then obviously my Twitter, Sebastian Bowkis on there.